All right, so my next step is Calvin cycle, the Calvin cycle. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture here. Need that label probably. My last picture, by the way, was my electron transport. And it seems as though I forgot a plus sign on that hydrogen. But otherwise, the second step of photosynthesis involves making glucose, and I use carbon dioxides to make that glucose ultimately. So I'm going to start down here in a cycle with carbon dioxide and also a 5-carbon molecule. I'm going to take this 5-carbon molecule and add in a carbon dioxide to make a 6-carbon molecule, right? 1 plus 5 is 6. Right, essentially in this picture, if you can count your carbons and follow along and see if things are anabolic, catabolic, you should be pretty good to go. This next step, going from C6, right, I actually split this 6-carbon molecule in half to make 2 C3 molecules. This part can be a little bit misleading because 6 to 3 looks like I'm going from big to small, and that would usually be catabolic, but this is actually anabolic. So that's something that in class we talked about. You definitely need to know that this would be anabolic, and the energy needed to make that happen comes from those 2 product molecules from the last picture. Right? I had an NADPH that can drop off some electrons to become NADP+. I have some ATP molecules that can drop off their energy to become ADP as they become ADP, right? So from that last picture, just to make that connection, remember, I have light energy stored in those 2 things. I'm using that light energy now to power the production of this 3-carbon molecule. So both the energies from NADPH and ATP end up in this 3-carbon molecule. It's a little bit deceiving. That 3-carbon molecule is actually very high energy, much higher energy than this 6-carbon molecule. So that was one of the most confusing parts about this picture. It's just that this looks like it could be catabolic, but it's really anabolic. Next step, right? Some of those 3-carbon molecules are going to stay in the cycle, and one's going to get kicked out every time. Now, that doesn't make sense because I haven't started balancing this yet, right? I really need to talk about how 3 carbon dioxides enter at a time and attach them to themselves to 3 different 5-carbon molecules to end up making 3 6-carbon molecules. But then if I split all 3 of these 6-carbon molecules in half, 3 times 6 is 18. I should end up with 6 3-carbon molecules because it's still 3 times 6 to get 18 total. So each 6-carbon molecule gave me 2 of these 3-carbon molecules, but since I have 3 of those 6-carbon molecules, I end up with 6 of those 3-carbon molecules. But one of those high energy 3-carbon molecules exits the cycle for every turn. The other 5 3-carbon molecules need to stay in the cycle so that I can recreate these 3 5-carbon molecules. Again, 5 times 3, there's 15 carbons here. 3 times 5, there's also 15 carbons here. In order for this cycle to continue, I have to recycle these 3-carbon molecules over here to make these 5-carbon molecules. But I wouldn't be able to do that without a special enzyme, which is a big part of our picture. So near on this line, an enzyme that helps catalyze this reaction is called Rubisco. And you'll have questions about Rubisco on your quiz, on your test, right? Rubisco is what allows this process to continue because I need to replace these 5-carbon molecules. If I don't, I'm going to end up just running out of those, and then I can't continue to add more carbon dioxide. I can't end up making lots and lots of glucose, right? As of right now, right, these 3-carbon molecules up here have high energy. I could use all of those 3-carbon molecules to make glucose, but I'd only be able to make a limited amount, right? So I really only used one at a time. I actually waste the energy in these three. So that's the other reaction that looks a little weird. This 3 to 5, right, is actually kind of catabolic because this is a really high energy 3-carbon molecule, right? So in order to change it into these 5-carbon molecules, to take those carbons, rearrange them to make my 5-carbon molecules, I have to lose energy, right? It costs me energy in that context, and I'm not catching that energy with anything. So this obviously seems wasteful, like I could have used those high energy 3-carbon molecules to make more glucose, but because I have to have this cycle continue, it's worth it. Because the whole idea here is that this Rubisco allows me to do this cycle over and over again. I have to do this cycle 2 times in order to get the 2 3-carbon molecules I need to make 1 glucose. And that's where some people get confused initially. I had 6 of those 3-carbon molecules. I could make 3 glucose right away. But if I do that, those are the only 3 glucose I'll ever make. So Rubisco is really important because it allows this cycle to continue. Right? I need to do this cycle at least twice to make 1 glucose, but I should be able to do this cycle an infinite number of times to make as many glucose as I want. As long as I have energy captured in these NADPH ATP molecules, as long as there's sunlight energy to power those reactions in my last picture, I should be able to power this process and make as much glucose as I want. So again, I had 3 carbon dioxides that entered, only 3 carbons that left at a time. This whole thing is balanced, right? Law of conservation of mass. I can't create or destroy atoms. So if I'm going to spit out 3 carbons, I have to bring 3 carbons in. If I do this twice, I get 2 of these 3-carbon molecules. That's why I used a blue 2 in front, because it's kind of hard to tell otherwise. And I need both of those to make my glucose. And that was my end game. That was my goal of this whole process. So this is the synthesis part of photosynthesis. I just made my glucose. But again, without Rubisco, this wouldn't happen over and over again. And plants couldn't make all the energy that they need, let alone enough energy that they can sustain entire ecosystems above them. Because they're the producers in our ecosystem, and lots of consumers depend on them. So they not only need to make enough glucose for themselves, but enough extra glucose to power all the other organisms in their ecosystem. Right, so that should be good for that picture.